Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Vague Ramblings. I want to go over something today as far as where the state of Dawn of the Dead is, because it seems like we haven't had a release of it in such a long time. And I know a lot of us are anxiously waiting on one, especially with the 40th anniversary happening this year or next year, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, I've heard from so many different people who consider 1978 to be the 40th anniversary, which obviously would mean this year, 2018, would be the 40th anniversary. And indeed, the recent convention, Living Dead Weekend, which celebrated the 40th anniversary of Dawn of the Dead, obviously considers 1978 the 40th anniversary, which is based on the world premiere of Dawn of the Dead. Actually did take place in 1978, but it did not actually open theatrically until 1979, which is sometimes why I think people sort of argue one way or the other. And, there's validity either way. So whether or not this year is the 40th anniversary, whether or not next year is the 40th anniversary, you can make that determination for yourself. Either way, it's been 40 years since the film was made. Well, why don't we go that way? And we really have only had one Blu-ray release of the film. And I'm going to sort of qualify that a little bit. So in 2004, we had the amazing DVD set from Anchor Bay, the Ultimate Edition set, which is really sort of, in many ways, almost the epitome release of Dawn of the Dead. It had the three cuts. It had the theatrical cut, the extended cut, which I believe was the version. I think that's the version that was shown at the Cannes Film Festival before it was actually edited down for what eventually became the theatrical cut. And then there was the Dario Argento cut, which was mainly seen in parts of Europe. That's the one that's under, because contractually Argento was able to sort of edit his own version of the film. That's why there are three versions of Dawn of the Dead. So in 2004, Anchor Bay had their amazing release. In my opinion, the only thing that release was missing and has been missing ever since was the commentary track that was done for the Elite Entertainment Laserdisc, which came out in the mid 90s. Now, I know Don May, who was part of Elite at the time and has since, he went on to form Synapse. I know for some reason, he's never been happy with that commentary track. I don't know why. I've always loved that commentary track. It's only for the longer cut of the film. I keep hoping that gets added to a release at some point. But anyway, that's sort of a side note. So in 2004, the DVD set was released, and then in 2007, as Blu-ray was sort of hitting the market, Anchor Bay put out some of their titles on Blu-ray, including Dawn of the Dead. Now, it was only the theatrical cut on that release, but, it was still nice to have. Now, but that was using the 2004 master. Now, the DVD set from 2004 did have an HD master. I mean, films since the late 90s have generally have actually had HD masters. HD masters were around a lot longer before HD was actually something that most people could actually utilize. It's kind of like, 4K masters have actually been around for several years now, even though 4K video is kind of only been around for, 2 years now. So the HD master that was done for the DVD is what was used for the Anchor Bay release in 2007. And at the time, it was good enough. I mean, we hadn't perfected sort of the way Blu-rays were done, and the compression that is done today is a lot better than what was done at the time. And even the creation of masters now are a lot better than they were done then. Now, since then, there have been several releases. For example, Arrow released a version in 2010, but I believe that was also using the existing masters. There was a Japanese Blu-ray in 2013 that also, I believe, used the same masters. And there was the German release, which came out earlier this year, and that was a limited release. I did pick that up because it had like all 3 cuts of the film, and it was region free and everything. And but again, it's using the same masters really that have been around for years. The only new master that has been done is in 2016. There was an Italian 4K release of the Italian cut. Now, I don't have that release, but to everything I know of, it sort of just suffered from some issues and everything. I want to say there's a corrected version coming out of that, or maybe it already has. I haven't actually been following it. The only reason why that one exists is because, again, the Dario Argento has the rights to the Italian cut only. The US cut that is, I believe, available in that set, which is not 4K, it is HD, is again the older masters. So where are we with Dawn of the Dead? So in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, Richard Rubenstein, who was the producer of the original Dawn of the Dead, he was also the producer on Martin and several of those early George Romero films. He owns the rights to Martin and to Dawn of the Dead. Even though he worked as a producer on some of the other films, other people sort of have distribution rights, but he actually has the rights to both of those films. And so about 10 years ago or so, he decided he was going to do a 3D version of Dawn of the Dead. Why? I don't know. At the time, it was a craze, all the 3D films. Now, I'm a huge fan of 3D. I absolutely adore 3D. I love 3D. But the problem is I'm not a massive fan of post-conversion 3D. And what I mean by that is through the decades, going back to the 50s, we've had several films that were actually shot in 3D. They're intended to be seen in 3D. I love seeing those films in 3D, especially in Blu-ray 3D, where you get the crystal clear image, not the anaglyph where you got the, red, green, red, blue color things, which give you a headache after a couple minutes. I absolutely adore Blu-ray 3D. I really hope we get, 4K 3D. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I love seeing proper 3D done because of the success of Avatar and everything. All of a sudden 3D kind of took off, which was both good and bad. Now, we did have films that were actually shot in 3D. For example, The Amazing Spider-Man was shot in 3D. Prometheus was actually shot in 3D, and several other films. What ended up happening was you had a lot of films that were done 3D in post, meaning they shot the film with the full intention of just being 2D, and then in post-production they would convert the film for 3D, so it wasn't really 3D, like full-on 3D, but you would at least get depth in shots that, you get that separation between the foreground and the midground and the background. Now, that didn't really add anything. I've never found it to really add much. It was fun in a couple films, but it didn't really add much. Why the money was spent to convert Dawn of the Dead to 3D, I do not know. Now, there's been speculation on the cost. No one knows for sure what the cost is. If I had to make an estimate, the cost was between $1 and $3 million, which is a lot of money for a low-budget film. In fact, if it's $3 million, it actually costs more than the film cost to make originally. Now, obviously, that film never got released. I've heard it played only a couple of times, and from what I've seen that people who actually saw it, they said it was, it was fine, but the 3D didn't really add much. There were a couple of moments where the depth of the mall was kind of cool to see in 3D because, again, you got the sense of foreground, background, and all that. But by and large, it didn't change anything. In fact, everything I saw from people who saw it, who've seen it, who basically said, like, look, it was just great to see Dawn of the Dead in the theater again, which is another thing, too. To play Dawn of the Dead legally in a movie theater, even to license that is an obscene amount of money. Trying to license the film for video release right now is costing an obscene amount of money. People are estimating that Rubenstein is trying to get back some of the money that he spent doing the 3D conversion. And, how is that going to play out? I mean, honestly, it's, to my knowledge, he's asking for more money than is really doable, because the thing is, there's so many costs involved in getting a film out onto Blu-ray, for example. And the only people who are going to buy the rights for Dawn of the Dead would be these independent companies. It's going to be Scream Factory. It's going to be Arrow again. Wellgo USA is a possibility. They put out that really great Phantasm box set last year. I've heard Criterion come up. I don't think Criterion would actually do it, even though their Night of the Living Dead release is fantastic. But I don't see them doing Dawn of the Dead. There's a couple possibilities. I mean, there's even the possibility that, who knows, maybe Rubenstein will actually just put it out himself. I don't think that'll happen, but, but anyway, so the fact that these companies would pay for the rights to put out Dawn of the Dead, and I assume it's probably a package deal to put out Martin and Dawn of the Dead, the asking price is still more than is feasible. I mean, I've never heard a final. Some people are saying he's asking for $1 million. He's not asking for $1 million. No one will ever pay $1 million for video rights. My guess is it's probably between 200,000 and maybe 500,000, which is too much. 100,000 is too much, but still doable. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of times, a lot of these smaller companies, for example, will pay up to about $100,000 for the rights to get certain films, but they're bundled. So, for example, when Synapse got the rights for Suspiria, that was part of a bundle deal. It was Suspiria, Tenebrae, and Phenomena. It may have been actually even over 100. I want to say it could have been more like 125 or something. But I mean, obviously, Suspiria alone made it worth it. But all those 3 releases for Synapse specifically were very well done. So they were able to. And the thing is, that's just, you got to understand, $100,000, let's say, maybe it's 125. That's just for the rights. Then you have to actually pay for the creation of the discs, and which includes doing the transfers and getting all the extras together and everything, and then making the discs and getting the cover arts and all that kind of stuff, and then getting it out to people. So there's a lot more money beyond that 100,000 that you have to spend to get those films out. Now, luckily, those were 3 films that have a very strong following, and at the end of the day, Don May of Synapse knew that would be one that upfront cost to license those 3 would pay off, and indeed it did. But again, that's a case where that happens a lot. In fact, I believe Code Red, for example, even though Scorpion has taken over the releasing, I believe they paid somewhere around $75,000, I think, to get the rights to Opera, The Sect, and The Church. I think those were the 3 in that deal. And again, that's 3 films. I mean, the thing is, the money that they'll make specifically from Opera should kind of offset, although I believe the other 2 should do pretty well for them as well. Now, in the case of Dawn of the Dead obviously has a much bigger following than those 2 films. Now, I will say, though, as much as I love Dawn of the Dead, I'm even wearing a Dawn of the Dead shirt today. It is one of my top 3 favorite films of all time. However, I'm not going to delude myself and say that, this would sell gangbusters. It would sell really well, but at the end of the day, Dawn of the Dead is a cult film. It's one of the more popular ones, but there's only so much money you can spend before you start losing the chance of making any money from it. If Richard Rubenstein is asking $500,000, let's say, for both Dawn and Martin, no company would make any money back. Or, at that point, you're basically hoping maybe you could break even if you're lucky. If he's asking $200,000, that's still means, yeah, you would make your money back, and you'd probably you'd make a bit of profit on it, but not massive amounts. And the thing is, do you want to take the gamble? $100,000 or $150,000 even, I could see happening. It's still high, because with the way the market is changing, anything is possible. But at the same time, the thing is, once you go over $150,000, it becomes easy for companies just to be like, you know what, it's too much, because they're gonna have to turn around and spend a lot of money creating those discs. So are they gonna take the gamble? I don't know. I mean, a company like Arrow Scream Factory, they could probably eat some of that because they have so many other releases that could offset it, on the chance. But at the same time, I don't know what the asking price is. If it's over, if it's over $200,000, for example, no one's going to do that. No one's going to take the chance and get these films, no matter how much they're wanted. And they are wanted. I mean, I can't tell you how much people are asking for the original Dawn of the Dead. But the problem is, at some point, you also start to lose your potential market. And what I mean by that is the fact that Dawn of the Dead is absolutely loved by people who are hardcore horror fans, people who are old enough, like myself, who sort of grew up with the film. Newer fans may not be as interested. I've seen some people who, they grew up more with the remake or with Walking Dead and stuff, and they're kind of, they don't see what the draw is to Dawn of the Dead. Unfortunately, the longer you wait, the more you start losing part of your audience on films. And what that means is basically the potential for, and then also you have people who are just like, who are also getting out of the physical media game. Now, not totally. Physical media will always be around, but I mean, you do have some people who do start leaning more towards streaming rather than physical copies. So where are we with Dawn of the Dead? The thing is, at some point, if Rubenstein wants to take advantage of an anniversary, for example, the 40th anniversary, he's running out of time fast. Let's say a deal were to go through tomorrow. There's so much that needs to be done in order to get it out by the end of the year. Now, on the plus side, you don't really have to do too much on the extras front. There's enough existing extras to really just bring those, get the rights and bring those into a release. And you don't really have to do too many new things. You can get some new things in there to kind of, which is always nice. But at the end of the day, the extras exist. So you're really putting all of your efforts really into just the transfers of the movies and getting them up to par. So in which case that would be possible. That's only if a deal is struck soon. And I have heard nothing about it. I mean, it's the kind of thing where he's just not in a hurry to do anything. And I don't understand why. And I do know from people who were involved in Dawn of the Dead and Martin that a lot of people are not happy with the way he's handling these two films. One, because those two films have, for the most part, have been off the market for a long time. Martin specifically actually has been off for a while. I mean, there's been no Blu-ray release of Martin. That last there were 2 DVD releases in the States. There was the really nice Anchor Bay release. That was from like 2000 with a great commentary track, by the way. In fact, it's actually one of my favorites. It was not on the Lionsgate DVD, which I did not think was actually that good of a release. I didn't think the commentary track on that was that good, even though it had many more participants. The commentary track on the original Anchor Bay release is fantastic. But that film hasn't been released in forever. So accessibility to those two films is pretty limited. And for the people who worked on those films, they're out residuals that they could be collecting. Again, it's a 40th anniversary. It would make sense to capitalize on that. I mean, what are you going to wait for the 45th anniversary? 50th anniversary? None of us are getting younger. I mean, we've already lost Romero. It kind of gets frustrating because it's like, the years kind of roll by and it's like, really? There's no new Dawn. There's no new Martin coming out. The only thing we can hope for is that he gives in, puts up a reasonable licensing fee, and one of these companies can come in and do a proper job and give the film the release that it deserves. Gives both films the release that they deserve. I don't know who, I don't know when, but let's just keep our fingers crossed and kind of hope for the best. So thanks for watching. Just want to give you my thoughts on where we're at with a Dawn of the Dead release. Hopefully things turn around and we get one soon, because that would be fantastic. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know who you think would actually handle it well, and if you're kind of anxious as well to kind of get a release as I am. Man, let's just keep hoping. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.